Welcome to the Plant-Free MD podcast with Dr. Anthony Chaffee, where we discuss diet and nutrition and how this affects health and chronic disease, and show you how you can use this to optimize your health and happiness, both mentally and physically. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Plant-Free MD podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Anthony Chaffee, and today I have a very special guest, Miss Ira Sahay from India, and she is going to be discussing with us her story coming to a carnivore diet and some of the issues that she faces helping people in India. Ira, thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure, Dr. Chaffee, and it was again a pleasure to interview at the second Metabolic Health Conference, and we had a great session. And thank you so much for inviting me here.
Yeah, well, you're very welcome. And it's a pleasure to see you again. And yeah, it was great. The Metabolic Health Conference was fantastic. So if people haven't seen that, please do go and check that out. So for people who haven't come across you before, can you tell us a bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, I'm a certified metabolic health coach. I'm based out of Mumbai, India. I'm a member of Dietary, which is India's first and the oldest and the only award-winning low-carb platform. I'm a certified metabolic health coach from there, and I've done their course, which is, incidentally also the biggest course on low-carb nutrition and metabolic health with 60 CPD credits. So, I've been certified by the biggest course, and that's my introduction. And as I said, I practice online, and I'm working with people from all over the world. Currently, I see clients from everywhere, and my specialization, or you can say the more cases that I see are of autoimmune. Of course, they're also of other metabolic issues, but largely autoimmune cases.
Very good. And so you now practice a carnivore diet, is that right?
Yeah.
But you weren't always carnivore, were you?
Oh no, I was a carnivore. I am a classic case of being on both sides of the spectrum, and I know what a vegetarian diet does to you and what a carnivore diet does to you. So without knowing the benefits of the carnivore diet, I was born into a family that was hardcore carnivore. And my dad was in films. Initially, he did a bit of acting, and then he is a big name in the association side of the films. So he was always very conscious of his looks and all of that. And he was a professional bodybuilder. And he was also, a small-time model in his college days. So he's very conscious of his body and what his food was. So incidentally, I was born in a family that ate meat both times. At least my dad did. And, I did the same, and I loved it. So growing up, all of these influences, the social influences that you have, the influences from TV, influences from peer, and from everywhere. And I don't know why, but I cannot clearly point it out. But I think it must be happening to a lot of people that they get influenced, by current waves or trends or whatever brainwashes them. And I turned vegetarian for about 10 to 12 years. And that's the story in short. But then I had an autoimmune condition. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition in 2021. And just by stroke of luck, I discovered the carnivore diet because I was looking for, it was kind of a do or die moment for me because I was on the verge of being advised a renal transplant by the doctors. They were already going to put me on steroids. So the story really begins in 2021. But yes, the background is that I was born into a hardcore carnivore family, and then I switched on to vegetarianism, not veganism, where I had dairy, I had eggs, but largely it was plant and grain based. So this happened for 10, 12 years. At the end of the spectrum, I was diagnosed with a membranous nephropathy, which is an autoimmune condition.
Yeah. And so when you switch to a carnivore diet, because a lot of people say, well, you can't do a carnivore diet because your kidneys are damaged. because you have all this protein. But what actually happened when you switched back to a carnivore diet?
Yeah, so I'll narrate this. I mean, it inspires me as well when I think about it. And the space that I was in, it was a very, very dangerous and scary place to be in for anybody. So this is in 2021, and end of September. I don't know whether it's related to the COVID vaccination or not, but I took my second shot. And within 2 days, I started noticing I had to go for a meeting somewhere. And I started noticing that my, the track pants or, the dresses would not fit me. And I changed two, three outfits. And I was wondering what has happened. But I didn't have the time really to think about it. And what had happened actually was that, I was retaining a lot of water in my body. And I had slightly noticed it, but maybe not that much. So I went out for this meeting and I finished the meeting. I came onto the road and I was talking to all my colleagues and, before just saying goodbye. And while I was in this conversation, I started feeling a lot of heat and a lot of heat on my head, on the back of my neck. And instantly, I started blacking out. I knew something is happening. I've never blacked out in my life. So I was scared like hell. And, you know, a lot of heat, a feeling of heat, and then I could not see anything, and it was all blurred. And then I just completely stopped seeing anything, completely stopped hearing anything. I was in a very confusing state. I don't know whether I was dead or alive. At that moment, I didn't even know what's happening to me, and I just fell on the road. Luckily, I was not in the middle of the road, and we were standing on the sides and we were talking, and I just blacked out. While I was blacking out, the only thing that I knew is that I held on to my purse because it had some important documents. So that's my last memory of that. And cut to, I don't know how many minutes later, but as they told me about 5 minutes later, they picked me up and they sat me down in a shop nearby, switched the fan on, gave me water. Everybody was kind of scared. And I just couldn't figure out what had happened to me. I mean, a feeling of lightheadedness. I had no sense, even though I could now hear and I was like zapped. What happened? And I kept sitting there, and all these people, they helped me reach home. So I reached home between the lift and my apartment. I'm on the fourth floor. I could not take that, those few moments of being in the lift and in the elevator. And I thought, this is the end of my life. It was such a suffocating feeling. And I was constantly, mildly blacking out and coming back, even though I was outwardly looking conscious, but I know what was happening to me. I just came home. And the best thing that I knew at that point of time was, a bit of salt and sugar mixed in water. And I just drank that and I slept. When I woke up, it was almost late evening. And I live by myself. So I went to my friend's place, who's just next door. So I told her that, such a thing had happened. And she panicked and she called in a doctor. And the first thing that she checked was my BP was very low. I think 60 something, it was 60 by something. So I don't exactly remember the number, but she said, it is dangerously low. And at that point of time, too, I was just, kind of zooming in and out of, I would say not consciousness, but that awareness. I don't know what she was saying. I don't even remember who came and, what they talked. But I just remember that your BP is dangerously low. So from there, I then had to travel to Bangalore, where my parents are based. So that was just 2 days later. And then, when I traveled to Bangalore, they took me to the biggest hospital there, and they'd already booked an appointment. I had called them and told them such a thing had happened. And the moment I landed there, I just kept my stuff in the house and I went to the hospital. I got myself, checked thoroughly. For 3 days, they carried out tests after tests after tests. Every damn test was done. And then they zeroed in on membranous nephropathy And they told me that you have an autoimmune condition, which is called membranous nephropathy. By then, at that point of time, I didn't know what it really was, but I knew that something is happening to me and this is not normal. I don't know. I was in a very puzzled state of mind. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to go back and what to do after that. So I was trying to ask a lot of questions, but in the series of tests that they were doing when they ascertained that I have membranous nephropathy, to confirm that, they did a lot of tests. There was 24 hours protein urea, which was massive. The leak was 7,635 mg per 24 hours. They did the spot urine protein test. They did the ultrasonography. They did the biopsy was done in the end when I was hospitalized. And I had legs that had swollen like an elephant. And it was so painful to walk because I felt there was water that is moving inside my body. And because of that movement and hitting the skin again and again, it was painful. I just wanted to, sit there. At that point of time, I had gained about 75 kgs. And every day, I felt more and more water is filling in my body. I don't know what is happening. And then they said, we will have to do a kidney biopsy to ascertain your condition. And they did the kidney biopsy. The entire feeling of being hospitalized, I had never been hospitalized. And I've been quite a fit person all my life, being a trained classical dancer and a lot into sports and all. I'm a black belt in Taekwondo. So all of that, and I was, on a stretcher being taken to, the room where they were to do my biopsy. Anyways, I landed there, but that was a very a very a moment of awakening, a moment of, I don't know what is happening to me, but I was just like an audience to, whatever was happening in my life. So all that experience of being taken on the stretcher, of being they put me on the bed and this machine comes down and, they do the biopsy. It was scary. And then they confirmed it was membranous nephropathy. So this was in 2021. So then began a journey of rediscovery, I would say, and a journey that was a fight against time because doctors asked me to keep checking my 24 hours protein urea. And I had multiple conversations with doctors in 4 cities, in 4 hospitals. Now, my first thing, I'm sorry to say, but I have grown up not, with the belief that if my body is sick, it will heal itself. And maybe because of that, I never felt sick. I don't know why. And I had never been very fond of doctors or very awed of doctors, like people are, especially in India. So, I went and my priority then became meeting doctors. Everywhere that I went, I wanted to meet doctors. I wanted to talk to doctors and I would want to ask them, why did it happen to me? Tell me the root, tell me the cause, tell me why it happened and how can I go back? What did I do wrong? So not that I was eating processed foods I was always a health conscious person. Yes, I may be high on carbs, but not very high and not, junk food at all and not processed foods at all. But none of the colas and eating out and all of that, nothing. I mean, a normal diet that people call usually healthy, which is home cooked, but definitely not junk. So I really wanted to know, what did I do wrong? And how have I reached here to a space where the doctors are standing in front of me, and it was very intimidating that they're telling me that the next line of treatment is going to be steroids. They're going to be putting you on steroids. And the first question that I asked them out of shock was, what next? If it doesn't work, what are you going to do to me? And they said, the way your protein urea is, it's a massive leak. And if it is contained, by introducing steroids, then fine. Otherwise, we will have to be looking at renal transplant.
Mm.
So this is the story, the first part of the story. And the second part is, my journey where I ran away from there. I took a U-turn. And my first thought process was, Dr. Chaffee, that if I have to die, because I did know a little bit about what steroids could do, and renal transplants have even now when I was doing my research, I found that only 15%, 50% of the cases, are a success, and 50% have a huge chance of relapse, membranous nephropathy.
Mm.
So, but then when I was doing my research, the first thing that I wanted to know was how to go back. And if I have to die, I will not go in for a renal transplant. I will go down fighting. I will do something. I will try to at least contain this, at least arrest this, not let it progress if I can. But I will not die because a renal transplant and a post-transplant a messed up life, or it didn't work out, or it relapsed. So that was my thought process, and the journey, the U-turn that I took from there was a pure leap of faith. And thankful to people like you, to Dr. Sean Baker, to Dr. Ken Berry, to people in India like Anup Singh and Shashi Kantangar, who are showing the light to people. And, that's how I took the U-turn at that point of time. The second part of the story, if you want me to continue, I'll just continue.
Yeah.
So this is, yeah.
Yeah.
So then, should I go on?
Yes, please do. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Okay. So when they asked me to, consider renal transplant, and I already know a few cases in my family, of course, I was very small then, who had a messed up transplant and nothing worked out, and they eventually passed away. So that is all the information that I had at that point of time as a layperson. I definitely didn't want to go in for steroids, and I definitely didn't want to go in for renal transplants. And it was kind of a shock. It was awakening for me. It was like really living in a moment where that you could be looking at the end of the tunnel, I mean end of your life, if this doesn't work out, if I just walk into steroids, and if I just walk into renal transplant, you never know that you are never able to come out of that. What if it messes up? I mean, there's no guarantee. And if I don't do that, then what is the way out for me? So therein began my journey of self-discovery. And I was ready to do anything. And I just forgot the doctors and what they told me. And I had dived into research. And I just typed membranous nephropathy everywhere. I think I read up all the literature, but there was not much. I think there was one case in Dr. Sean Baker's community, and but that was that was all that I found. But my common sense, in the meanwhile, I had huge froth, massive froth in the urine all this while, and it had been increasing. And I had lost all my hair. I had patches, bald patches. Now that you can see here, these were all bald patches, and I was embarrassed to the core. It was loss of self-esteem for a person who was so outgoing and vivacious and always at the helm of things. I actually became a recluse, and these bald patches and the skin had sunk because there was nothing to hold on to for the skin, so it started looking like a sunken face and all of that. And there was hair all over the place, all over my house. So when the cleaner came, she found a lot of hair. So that went on and on and on. I mean, it was not ready to stop, and I used to like, the hair had receded. Now you can see it's come fully, but the hairline had receded till here. And it was such a blow on the self-esteem. And, I cannot tell you that. So the first thing that out of common sense, that if I'm having so much of protein leak, and, I should be able to, and I'm looking like this, I should be able to put that protein back into my body, and started with that thought. Of course, the doctors never told me to increase the protein. All the advice that they put on my prescription was dietary salt intake has to be reduced. That's all. That's the protocol that they gave me. So I kept asking, this really boggles me. I kept asking them because I was desperate. Anything that I can do, anything that I can eat or stop eating, to arrest this, to go back. And said, no, less protein and less salt. So I asked them, I said, is it a salt problem? If I reduce the salt, will it go away? And they had no answer. Literally, they had no answer. I call this kind of borderline illiteracy that, you're not able to answer people who trust you, who are asking you what you are supposed to know anyway. So actually, there was no resolution given, and then the only thought was that I should be able to put this protein back into my body. If I'm looking so old and haggard, and I've lost my hair, and my skin has sunk down, then I should be able to put that protein back to look better. This was the thought, and I was a vegetarian at that point of time. So I naturally started, putting my vegetarian sources of protein together, which in India is commonly cottage cheese, which is paneer and hunkered and cheese and all of this. But I could not do it because it was too time taking. It was too complex. It was a daily job to be done in order to get that protein in your body. And it was too complex for me. And here I wanted a sorted out something which didn't take a lot of time, which was simple to do. And the only thing that, and in that process, when I started reading about carnivore, went to Dr. Sean Baker's page, Dr. Ken Berry's page, and so many people. Lately, I found you, luckily. So, all these people were talking about carnivore, and I could understand and why meat over vegetarian sources of protein, because it was much simpler. It saved me the time. It saved me the effort, in the kitchen. I was not really in the frame of mind for cooking, at that point of time, to make cottage cheese every day, to make hunkered every day. I'd just probably dump in 500 grams or 1 kg of meat into a slow cooker or something, and, just eat it. And it's as simple as that. So then, uh, you know, I turned back to carnivore. I would call it my roots because that's how I grew up. And it didn't take me any time. I mean, I think I switched in one day. I came back to Mumbai from my parents' place and I went carnivore. That's my story.
Hey everyone, really happy to announce a new sponsor for the show and for everybody down in Australia, Stockman Steaks, who are delivering high quality grass-fed and finished pasture-raised beef and other meats, flash frozen and vacuum sealed to your door, something that I've been enjoying a lot of myself recently as well. They also have a great range of specialty items such as high-fat keto mince and carnivore beef and organs mince with liver, kidneys, and beef heart as well. So use code Chaffee today for a free order of beef mince or another specialty gift along with your order at stockmansteaks.com.au, and I'll see you over there. Thanks, guys. Well, that's an amazing story, and I think it's unfortunately at least the first part of that is going to be very typical one where people come into some sort of kidney disease or some sort of disease in general, like membranous nephropathy, and their doctors just say like, yeah, just take the pills and just wait until your kidneys completely dissolve.
You'd be amazed,
Yeah.
Dr. Chaffee, that they had put me on diuretics and I had to take it in the morning and in the evening. I did that. And every 10 minutes, I was going to the washroom. There was
Mm.
so much water retention. I had gained 20 kgs. When I was hospitalized, I have shown the pictures in Shashikant Iyengar's podcast. I mean, my legs were swollen like anything. I think somebody put it out just on Twitter. I think Anoop had put it out on Twitter, these pictures. So I'm hospitalized and my legs were swollen. They were like elephant's legs. And even though I was on diuretics, every evening I used to take it and keep running to the washroom. And every morning I used to wake up with more edema, more fluid, more retention. I don't know where that was coming from. So the doctors, as I said, they never gave me any protocol in terms of diet. And they asked me to keep testing it, keep testing it every month because this is massive. And I was scared to hell. So I kept testing. And once I went carnivore, I think in 1.5 months, the first physical changes that I started noticing was less hair strewn across the house. That was, less hair fall. And the froth in urine had gone down massively. It went on decreasing with time, and the skin that had become, haggard and all of that, that started restoring itself up. So these are the physical changes that I noticed. But when I kept testing, across many months, the proteinuria started coming down. But I started feeling much better even before. I mean, you don't need to look at numbers to know that you're feeling good.
Yeah.
And I had started noticing those changes in me, and that was a huge relief. And cut to 1 year when I went back to Bangalore and to the same doctor, exactly on the same date, I think, 1 year later. And I'm the same doctor. I showed him my 24-hour proteinuria report and everything else. And he wrote a few tests, which was done. And then he wrote on his prescription, spontaneous remission.
Mhm.
So that was, that kind of, made me ask him. I said, what is spontaneous remission? Because till yesterday, you were telling me you would have to go for a renal transplant. And today you're saying, and you didn't give me any solution. And you said, the path forward is this, steroids and renal transplants. And now you're saying spontaneous remission. In between, something happened. Would
Mhm.
you want to know about it? So
Mhm.
he said, yeah, what did you do? So I said, I put myself on a carnivore diet, which is an all meat diet. So he was himself was a vegetarian, so he was kind of stunned. He said, really? I said, yes. And you would not believe, even I would not believe if somebody told me, but this has happened to me. And I have completely reversed it to the point that you have to write spontaneous remission. And we had a small laugh over that, but he was actually shocked. He said, we have not been taught this, and I would have never, maybe it worked, but I would have never recommended this to you.
Yeah.
So this was our conversation.
Yeah. Well, it's nice that he was at least a bit open-minded about it. Did he look into it at all and think about doing that with his future patients?
No, I don't
No.
think he was interested in that at all. No, but that's, I think, the usual. I mean, doctors like you, or the doctors that we interact with or work with or talk to on social media, and people who are working on through Carnivore and LCHF, they are different genre altogether. I don't expect doctors. In fact, I would have been shocked if he had asked me about the diet and if he had wanted to understand me. No, he would not do that because he's very stuck in his medical protocol. He's not interested in what's working. He's
Mm.
interested in introducing the protocols that he has been taught in his medical school. So that's why I call this borderline illiteracy, because you're not able to answer, you're not able to give solutions to people. You're just pushing pills and this therapy and that therapy and this transplant and that transplant. Why don't you ever talk about the root cause? Because they never were able to give me a solution. They could not even answer why it has happened. Forget pinpointing the exact cause, but at least you could have talked about it. He said that it's idiopathic.
Mm. Yeah.
So idiopathic is, that's what I'm saying. So the borderline illiteracy is idiopathy. When you cannot when you cannot explain anything, when you cannot answer, when you cannot assure people, and the moment you look at symptoms, you start pushing pills, and nobody's interested in bettering the patients. People are interested, doctors are interested, and the entire sick care industry is interested in making somebody out there a millionaire and a billionaire. Because who's healing on pills?
Yeah. Yeah. It's it is pretty sad though, when you see something like that as a doctor, it does behoove you to look into it. I mean, even things like, okay, well, maybe that was just a fluke, but have you ever seen that before? Have you ever seen it just spontaneously resolve like that?
Yeah.
If someone has done made a change, and maybe if it's something weird, it's like, well, I guess if you think it's so outlandish, it's like someone was just like, well, I rubbed my quartz crystals 3 times every Sunday, and I prayed to this, Raggedy Ann doll that I had since I was a kid. He's like, all right, well, that's cute,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I'm not going to look into that, but
Mm.
you know, it's it is something that something like maybe not even the carnivore diet, but the ketogenic diet. I mean, that has thousands of studies that have shown significant benefit to specific medical outcomes, including kidney disease and kidney disorders, and also autoimmunity. And that's what people don't understand, that there actually are a number of studies that show a clear and distinct link between autoimmunity and diet. And I've run into this a couple of times with doctors who say, well, you can't say that. You can't recommend this to patients because, or I can't recommend it to patients because there's no literature on the subject. There's no studies done. It's like,
Correct.
well,
Yeah.
have you looked though? Because there actually are. There are actually a number of studies, especially in autoimmunity and certainly in kidney disease. So you do have to look, but a lot of people just dismiss because it wasn't taught to them in residency, it wasn't taught to them in medical school, therefore it doesn't exist. But of course, that's
Yes,
not
correct.
true.
Even now, Dr. Chaffee, whenever I post a success story, and most of my, clients are, as I said, autoimmune conditions. So there was this specific case that I posted on, under which, doctors came and, they started talking. So this was a lupus case, lady. She had been diagnosed with lupus 22 years back when she was in her seventh or eighth grade. Doctors had put her on steroids right then, and she had been on steroids now 22 years later. Now, everything, her ANA was positive, and every month she landed up in hospital emergency because of stomach pain and cramps. Once she comes on to a carnivore protocol, this never happens again. I mean, she doesn't has to, visit the hospital even once. That stomach cramp, the pain, everything is gone. She's feeling so much better. She used to have headaches and this and that, all screwed up gut. She could not digest things. And, in, I think, 3 months, 4 months, around that. But we published the results, I mean, on Twitter much later, or after 6 months. And when she had, she gave me a testimonial, which I tweeted. Doctors came under it. I mean, the most people who are the most problem, I think, with people getting healthy are doctors. They would come under every tweet and tell you this is not possible. Lupus cannot go, and it's always there. It will come back, and carnivore is not the cure. So this happens typically. Typically, when I post a case and a success story, they would inevitably come under the tweet, and they would write the same. So instead of writing this cannot happen, why can't you ask, how did you do it? Where is that spirit of inquiry? I mean, why are
Yeah.
you dismissing something, a testimonial that a person who has bettered herself is giving out? It is not me who's saying that. For example, if I had membranous nephropathy, I'm a big vocal proponent of the carnivore diet. I've been on the carnivore since the last 3 months. Anybody saying any otherwise, because I've done all the jig. I went to the doctors in 4 cities. I've had discussions after discussions. If I had not turned carnivore, they would have put me on steroids and they would have pushed me to renal transplant.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
why should I mean, talking of studies, I mean, you can see a person bettering. You can see all his symptoms going away. You can see him for the first time, or her for the first time in 22 years, not going to the hospital emergency because of a massive stomach cramp and pain. She has come off all her steroids. And yet, I don't know what the problem is. It is so difficult to accept, that somebody else is giving results while we have blown off half our lives and, half our money studying something that eventually is not giving results.
Yeah. It's funny too because they say, well, you can't, that didn't fix the lupus. Yes, they come off their medication. Yes, they've all
Yeah,
their symptoms, but it'll come back. It's like, well,
yeah.
that presumes that you know what causes lupus. You say, okay, well, what causes lupus then? Oh, well, we don't
Uh,
know. Well, then you don't know what's going to fix it then, do you? Because you just don't know. And that's okay that you don't know. We don't know a lot of things, but you can't say, no, that definitely won't work because if you don't, because that presumes that you understand, the mechanisms in which this is caused. And if you don't understand how this is caused, then you can't say how it's going to be solved either. Well, no, that's
exactly.
just a fluke. Well, or maybe it's addressing the underlying root cause, which is eliminating out toxins from the body that your body is making antibodies towards, and you're getting cross reaction with your body, and your different tissues are getting hit in the crossfire. That is a very plausible etiology. And we when I put my patients on a carnivore diet who have autoimmune issues. Now, some autoimmune issues you can track the antibodies, and some you can't. But say in a very good example of this is Hashimoto's. I have
Hashimoto's, yes.
so many patients with Hashimoto's. It's very easy to track their antibodies, and I see them. And so I see patients that I actually just had a patient today, and I was trying to get her to go onto a carnivore diet. She was sort of a bit wishy-washy about it, like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. She was taking different medications and all this sort of stuff. And then I saw her again a couple months after that, and and her antibodies had gone up by a couple hundred points. And I was able to convince her at that point to go onto a carnivore diet. And now, a few months after that, her antibodies have come down 150 points, right? So it's this clear line, and this clear sort of reaction that when they go on a carnivore diet, they remove plants from their diet, antibodies come down. Then they slip up and they add something back in, antibodies come right back up, and then they come back down. And it's a very clear relationship. And I even pointed this out to her as to say, look, we already have a couple data points that sort of up and down
Yes.
based on your behavior and your choices. If you want, we can test this a bit more thoroughly, and we can get you go very strict, lion diet, just red meat and water, and then we'll check your antibodies, and then like right when you're going to have like a birthday party or something where you want to go out and have a dinner and a this and some drinks, and then we'll see, and then we'll check your antibodies a couple days later, and we'll be able to see, and then you go back on it and we'll see if you want to do that. She's like, nope, no, that's okay. I
Ah,
already see it. Yeah. So it's we do see this. And so the idea that we wouldn't even be curious anymore, no, it didn't come from Pfizer, therefore, I don't want to know about it. That is, it's pretty sad that that spirit of inquiry has died in most doctors. Whereas in the
yes.
1800s, people were just so interested in, like, let's figure this out. Let's see, looking at interesting cases and trying to study them and try to figure out why this is the outlier when all these other cases went the other way. Try to figure that out. That's how you figure things out. That's how you cure diseases. That's how you advance human knowledge, not just sitting on your
Yes.
laurels and waiting for someone else to do it and bad mouthing the people who are trying to do it. It is absolutely ridiculous. Like,
Correct.
if you don't if you don't try different things, you'll never get new solutions. You'll never get new treatments, and you'll never push the boundaries of human knowledge. Yeah.
No, they came to me as well. And, a lot of people, when I posted my, remission, and, when I started practicing myself, and I had come from this background already where I had put my autoimmune under remission. And, when I posted that, a lot of doctors came, to write. And it's always the doctors, this goes under remission on its own. Yeah, so I should have waited, till the time, gotten a kidney renal transplant done. And at what point of time would you, would this have gone under remission? I have no answer, but just the ego to contest something somebody else has given result. It's not the pills, it's not the white coat, it's not the education that you got, that you paid for, has not gotten you any results. As Dr. Anwin keeps saying, it's very embarrassing and depressing to be a doctor. And I had asked him the question, and not to mock doctors, they are good people, they're trying to do something, but yeah, they're not doing it in the right direction, and they don't want to know. That is the problem in India. And rarely will you find a doctor admitting that yes, we've been wrong. As Dr. Gary Fetke also said in our Metabolic Health Conference, it's time that you said sorry, time that you accept that what we have been doing is not the right thing. It's not giving any results. So it's, I think, difficult for them to accept that we are trained for that, and we should be the one, they should be coming to or talking to, but they're doing complete antithesis of what, we've told them. Don't eat meat. reduce salt, and they've gone in just the opposite and it's given them results. I think that's a big blow to the ego.
Mhm.
So they told me, it would have come under remission on its own. I said, yeah, really? At what point of time?
Mhm.
So I should have waited really to be taken for a renal transplant. And then,
Mhm.
oh, sorry, it didn't come under remission.
Yeah, well, like all the other people that just go
So,
into remission because because that's what normally happens with these sorts of things. They just spontaneously go into remission on their own. You don't even need to treat autoimmune conditions, apparently, according to these people, because they just treat themselves. Of course, that's not the case. These things get worse and they continue to get worse. And so that's not only a cop out, but it doesn't even hold up to the minor the bearish scrutiny of the natural history of these diseases. They get worse, and like you say, people end up losing their kidneys and having to
yes,
get kidney transplants. So clearly they don't just go into random spontaneous remission. And the thing is too is that we used to, as scientists and researchers, if you had a hypothesis, you would try to develop an experiment that could prove it wrong. I mean, that was what real science was. You didn't try to like develop a study that showed that you were right. You try to develop a study that could prove that it's wrong. And
yes,
so one thing is that they could do if they wanted to try to prove this is wrong is try it. Try it with their patients. Well, it's like, well, I think you're wrong. Okay. Well, then you can show that very easily. Try it. Put your patients on it with membranous nephropathy or other autoimmune issues. Put them on just a pure red meat and water diet and see what happens. And you
yes.
sure get 10 people, 100 people. There's plenty of people in India. I'm sure there's going to be
Yeah,
a lot of
yeah.
people to try it with, and then
Mm.
prove me wrong. Get your case series, get your patient, prospective cohort. Say, okay, we've got 20 patients. We're going to put them on a carnivore diet to show that this does nothing. Please
Yeah,
prove
yeah.
us
Do
wrong.
that, do that.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
please do. Yeah. And it's
Yeah,
very
but they
interesting.
won't. I mean, this is
They
hilarious. I
won't.
mean, at least ask us what we did, and it's as simple as,
Mhm.
we are very happy to. We are working with a lot of doctors. A lot of them are our clients as well, and we have no, qualms or hassles in working with doctors. In fact, we are very happy. And but then there is a section of the of doctors that would just come in, kind of be very rude to you and would not accept that. And don't accept what I am saying. Read the testimonial of the person who's saying it herself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you were so capable, she would not have been on steroids for 22 years.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely.
So,
Yeah. So it sounds like none of these doctors actually learned anything, unfortunately.
no.
But what about other people in your sphere of influence, people that you've worked with? Have other people come around from your story?
Yeah, in fact, Dr. Chaffee, after Dr. Sean Baker's podcast, and even till today, I keep getting emails and I keep getting DMs in my Twitter and Instagram. It has, I guess, created some positive impact, I would say. I don't know to what level, but I am so glad to be able to tell my story. And, I just did what I felt was right. I just defied the medical protocol. I was not even sure if I'll live, to see the next Diwali or something like that, because it was around that time that I was diagnosed with the condition. So I completely turned around my health and everything. And I'm the biggest proponent because this has not come to me through any doctor, through some other case that I saw. It was purely my research, and by default, I came to Dr. Sean Baker and Ken Berry and all of you, who are doing such wonderful work later on. But at that point of time, it was a lone fight. I had nobody to turn to and to refer, any literature that I could read. It just came and hit me out of nowhere. So now that I see people who write to me and who tell me that, it's very inspiring. Even at D Life in our community in India, I mean, a lot of people have turned carnivore. I'm so happy that people who had never eaten meat, this gradually, because they want to get onto something which is, the appropriate diet for you. And they had seen my case. And they tried a little bit with eggs, and then they introduced fish and, lamb mince, so something like that. So even at D Life, I mean, I'm very happy to say that, Anup, who was earlier a vegetarian and had some eggs, is now a pure carnivore. So
Mhm.
the impact of the Chaffee has been that, this my own success story, and then, doing, some podcasts, and very important ones at that, has spread the story. And at D Life, I was just talking about Anup, who's the founder of D Life, and he was a vegetarian with some eggs and, all of that. Usually that's how people in India are. And when I came and started talking about the carnivore diet and how it had reversed my autoimmune, and this started kind of spreading like the good news, and a lot of people came onto to the wagon. And Anup is now a full blown carnivore. I mean, that's my biggest win, that somebody who has founded the LCHF movement in India, he's himself a carnivore. So I think by that way it has influenced a lot of people for good, and I'm happy when they come back and tell me that we bettered our there's no more bloating, or there's no more joint pain, or there's no more this and that. So every time they come back and tell me this, I say a silent thank you for to whatever power that drove me towards carnivore. And it was, as I say, moment of awakening. It's nothing short of a spiritual awakening. Actually, it's not even a diet. It's something that just happened, and it has completely changed the course of my life. And from there to now, when I'm helping more and more people, especially people with autoimmune conditions, I thank that leap of faith that I took. And every time that I see people, I thank people like you and so many other who are working in this space and guiding us. You know, the movement that we have started, this is not going to die down because, there are no studies or this and that, no excuses, but look at the real evidence and the mountain of Herculean mountain of evidence that's right in front of you. You cannot deny that. Forget studies.
Mhm.
I am one, who you can call me n is equal to 1 or whatever. A lot of people wrote that n is equal to 1. But that n is equal to 1 has multiplied now. There are many n is equal to 1.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Millions now. Yeah.
millions.
Yeah. And when you are a clinician and you try something and it works, do you need a study to then say like, well, yes, it works. And every time I apply this to my patients, I get the same results and it keeps working. But it's better than the standard of care and it's saving their lives. But until there's a study out, I don't know, probably got to stop. And like, well, that's actually irresponsible. I mean, that goes back to Hippocrates, where he said that, you had to practice, you had to practice based on the results, not based on dogma and religion. You didn't just pray to Apollo. You had to do things that actually had demonstrated positive results. And so, yes, you can do that from a study. If someone else has done a study and shown, hey, we took 4,000 people and we had these results, great. That's a good starting point for you can say, okay, well, maybe try and apply that to my patient population. But if you have a study that says, well, this intervention is going to be really good for your patients, and you apply that intervention and it gets bad results, well, it doesn't matter what the study says, you're not going to do it anymore. And
Correct.
so it doesn't matter what other studies say. If you find something that does work, well, then you need to keep doing that. I mean, that goes back to Hippocrates, that you should do that, that you
Yes.
do the treatment that works. And eating meat doesn't hurt people. It doesn't kill them. The whole saturated fat and cholesterol, that's a lie that's been roundly disproven time and time again for decades. And it's time for that nonsense to die. So I don't even care to engage in that anymore, because it's never
Yeah.
been proven that saturated fat or cholesterol cause harm. So, I'm just not even going to entertain that anymore. So meat is good for you. It doesn't cause any harm. So there's no harm in providing that for people. There's no harm in excluding plants, because plants do have toxins. That's an objective fact. Meat does not. That's an objective fact. And
Yes.
so when you apply that and you see it help them, well, then you keep doing that. It doesn't matter what a study says. All a study can do is help guide your practice, help guide your decision making. But once you make that decision, you have to deal with the results. And if you have positive results, well, then you apply that to the next patient and you get positive results. And you apply it again, and you apply it again, and apply it again. And if you keep getting positive results, well, then it would be unethical to not do that anymore. That's sort of the position
Yes.
I'm in now because I've already
Mm.
applied this to so many patients and I've seen it work every single time. It would be immoral and unethical of me if I didn't apply this to my future patients
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
And that's what any doctor and clinician can do right now. You don't need to wait for, Pfizer to put out a study. You can just take a look and say, okay, other people are doing this. There's enough data out there to make me interested in this. You apply it to your patient. You see people. You give them informed consent. Say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. I think it might help you. We'll see what happens. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, no harm done. You go on to the next thing, and that's fine. And that is what you do. We do this all the time in medicine. We have our differential diagnosis, and we have our treatment. We say, okay, well, this is what we think it is, so we're going to treat you with this. Ooh, doesn't work. Okay, next one on the list. Now we'll try this one. Oof, doesn't work. Next one down on the list.
Mm.
Well, why don't you just throw meat in there somewhere and carnivore diet and if it doesn't work, okay, on to the next thing. But for a lot of these things, it does work. For diabetes, it works. For autoimmunity, it works. It's for mental health issues, it works. There's so many things for which this works. For Alzheimer's, dementia, these sorts of things, it works. Autism, we're seeing this now too with high-fat, meat-based ketogenic diets are improving autism outcomes. Um, this is something that is readily available to people in at least most of the world, and it's something easy. It's free. You can do it on your own. You don't need special permission. You don't need drugs. You don't need a prescription. You don't need you don't need to spend $10,000 a month on these different, brand new novel drugs. It's just something you just do. You just buy different things instead. If money's difficult, well, it's eggs are cheap, chicken's cheap, these sorts of things are cheap, and it's typically a lot less expensive than the medications. And so it behooves any doctor to at least give this a try for their patients, because if it helps, then that's your job, is to get them the help that they need. And holding back from that, I think, is a bit ignorant, like you said, but also a bit cowardly, honestly, that that you're not willing to stick your neck out a little bit to help your patient. That's what you're there for. You're there to do whatever you can to help your patient. And if it's something that is not going to cause harm and could help them better than anything else they're doing, you have a duty of care to that patient to at least try it. Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor at Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products because honestly, all you need to be healthy is to just eat meat. For those times that you're out hiking, road tripping, or stuck at work and you want a nutritious snack that is just meat, fat, and salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. So I like this product not because it's just pure meat, but also because I want the carnivore market to thrive as well. And the more we support meat-only products, the more meat-only products there will be available in the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to get behind, check it out using my discount code Anthony to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25% off total. All right, thanks guys.
But I was saying that, while I was carnivore, while I was a vegetarian, I also had other issues that, that cropped up in those 10 years of being vegetarian. One was plantar fasciitis, and the other was dental issues. And of course, the weight yo-yoing was, always there. So I had done some dental treatment, and they said that you will have to go for root canal and all of that. As far as plantar fasciitis was concerned, I had talked to 3 doctors about that as well, and they had all suggested me surgery. When I had membranous nephropathy, after that, at the end of the 10 or 12-year spectrum,
And I was focusing on membranous nephropathy and taking more protein and putting this under remission. My focus was something else. But in the interim, all of these other health issues sorted themselves out completely. So I was, imagine what if I had done a surgery for my plantar fasciitis? So something which is as simple as a dietary intervention. You are the medical protocol is actually non-responsive. I mean, for everything you're pushing pills, for everything you're pushing surgeries, which is as simple, as it can be resolved on a dietary intervention, which is what exactly happened when I turned carnivore. Till now, I've had no dental issues after 3 years now. The plantar fasciitis is completely gone. Earlier, I could not get up and, and start walking, get up from my bed and start walking. I would take 10, 20 minutes to put my feet down. It was that painful. And now it's not there.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. That's amazing. Um, so now as your, metabolic health coach, how does that work when you're in India, when the predominantly people are vegetarian and, but when they come in with issues that you think that like a ketogenic carnivore diet can help, especially things like autoimmune issues, how does that work?
I think in India, what has happened is that there's a vertical split of the Indian society, we were talking before the session as well. Vertical split of the Indian society based on a highly, I would say, socio-political, politico-religious polarization of the misplaced idea of Puritanism. So, that is called vegetarianism in India. So it's an extension of, I would say, the division, of the society, and with the belief that meat is impure. So coming from that background, and when I'm dealing now with people with autoimmune conditions, especially, they expect me to wave my magic wand and provide them a solution. And a lot of them still write. I mean, they keep writing. Can you not come up with something that can help us also? So the point is, I don't want to help you, but how do you help someone who doesn't want to help themselves? Your entire problem is the toxicity of the food that you're eating, which is grains and plant based. And as you already know, I mean, dairy is a no on autoimmune. Most people react to that, and that is out, and a lot of things are out. So the only thing that works best on a autoimmune condition is the carnivore diet, or elimination diet. Now, if you are grain and plant based and you are not ready to eat meat, what do you eat? What do you put these people on? So a lot of noise about vegans, curing, inverted commas, curing the autoimmune condition, or autoimmune conditions being cured or put under remission on a vegetarian diet. Maybe you may see some relief for some time, but what about the deficiencies long term that it would create? And because of the deficiencies, multiple or multi-dimensional problems that you would face. So I am very clear in my practice, and I've written about this on Twitter as well. If you are a vegetarian, please change your food ideology, food politics, and understand the science. And if it has benefited so many people, try it. If it doesn't help, that's fine, but it will help. But there are a lot of people, Dr. Chaffee, who are not ready to listen, who only want to be on a vegetarian diet. If I show you pictures, I mean, I'm sure you must have seen, I mean, Legends planners, people are filled with that and they don't want to go carnivore. When I have a case where she's bettered immensely on a carnivore diet and her spots have healed and they have lessened and all of that. But every day there are inquiries about, wanting to enroll and wanting to sign up, but they're not ready to turn carnivore. Those who do, they see results. So I am very clear. If there is a protocol, I will, of course, I do want to help you, but in the interim, there are a lot of people who are ready to be carnivore or who are meat eaters. I would rather focus my energies there, because I know it will give them quicker results than, kind of investing my time into first changing an ideology, first changing a religious belief, first changing the food politics, and then, bringing them on to something which may or may not.
Yeah. Um, that's the thing too. It's like when people say, it's like, well, can you do something for us? It's like, well, can you figure out, something that can help us? That's like saying, someone who's an alcoholic, and you say, well, it's like, well, your problems are coming from alcoholism. It's just like, well, yeah, but can you, and you have to get rid of alcohol, and you have to stop drinking. It's like, well, can you come up with a cure that doesn't involve me stopping alcohol? It's like, well, no, not really. When alcohol is the problem that you're having. And yeah, but that makes sense. I mean, obviously, culturally, this is something that can be very hard for people. Do you ever, try to get people like on ketogenic vegetarian diets? Is that something that can help with in certain cases?
That is, yeah. I work with many people who are vegetarians and who have put their diabetes under remission or other metabolic conditions also under remission, because D-Life was founded on the principles of also helping Indian vegetarians. Now they eat dairy, they would include eggs also, a lot of people. So that's not very difficult to work around with. Problem is, the ones who are, autoimmune condition but want to be on a vegetarian diet. That's the issue. But for the rest, we work with a lot of vegetarian clients for diabetes, for hypertension, fatty liver, all of those metabolic syndromes, and we have great results of that as well. So people usually do understand, and a lot of vegetarians do agree to eat eggs also. They already eat eggs, a lot of people. But those who understand the science, vegetarians are okay with introducing eggs. They want to take dairy. So it's not very difficult. Why autoimmune protocol becomes difficult? Because even eggs react. Forget dairy, even eggs react in a lot of people. So you have to be on an elimination diet. I've had a case of ulcerative colitis, and she would react to everything: eggs, chicken, fish. And the minimum spices that she could put in her meat, she even reacted to that. Finally, we had to put her on a meat water salt diet. And that was working. That's working.
Yeah, very good. Something we were talking about before we came on air, which I thought was quite interesting, something I've mentioned a couple of times before, but obviously, that's just coming from me. But the idea that people in India have always been vegetarian is actually not really the case. Some people say, well, if we should be eating meat, well, look at or if we shouldn't be vegetarian, we look at India. They've been vegetarian for thousands, or they even say they've been vegan for thousands of years, which is not true. And look at them. And my point is typically, yeah, look at them. They have some of the highest metabolic disease rates in the world, some of the highest diabetes rates in the world. So do look at them. It's sort of an anti-blue zone. This is an area that is quite unwell. But what can you tell us a bit about that, about the origins of this idea that India is vegetarian, and how true that is?
Yeah. So as we had discussed, I talked about this on Dr. Sean Baker's podcast as well. And I really want people to know this is a false, propaganda that has been pushed in India. Now, if starting from the ancient times, if you look at the most ancient and classic literature that we have, Ayurveda mentions meat, which is mamasa, as a nutritious food and also as a medicament. Now, these are the sages, the rishis, the gods that you worship, and these literature are written by them. And you've only highlighted the vegetarian section, and you've completely pushed under the carpet the portion where it mentions meat as not only a medicament but as a nutritious diet, right from peacock meat to rabbit meat to whatever meat you can imagine is mentioned there. And I've shared the literature also many times around. I think it's with a lot of people now on the internet and in D-Life and everywhere. So it mentions meat for all ailments, including autoimmune condition. And yes, it does.
Wow.
And but it places stress on what kind of meat, what gender of the meat, should be eaten, what portion of the meat, and how it should be cooked. So these are the the rules to be followed, because they have gone into great depths. But the point is, meat is mentioned, and every kind of meat is, even crocodile meat, I think, is mentioned. So imagine if peacock meat and rabbit meat and everything is mentioned. How is India a vegetarian country? I mean, when are you talk? What is this time period that you're talking about? Because right from the start, we have this literature that talks about meat. Now, a lot of people talk about meat being impure coming from a religious, perspective. But I think that's just the momentum which has picked up in the last 100 years, 200 years maybe. And it started with the British Raj. And I think before that, it was not so much. Vegetarianism was not a virtue signaling. It had not become a kind of a propaganda. There may have been people who were vegetarian, and there's a certain segment that has been vegetarian, or I know they have been vegetarian. But this really started, I think, became more obvious during the British Raj, when, of course, you were enslaved and you were put on a grains and beans diet, and that's what slaves are supposed to eat. I mean, why would they even make provision for you to eat the most nutritious diet? So meat was largely kept for people who were ruling us, and thus the propagation of a meat and the grain and bean-based diet and plant-based diet, and starting from there. Plus, I would say a lot of media and mushrooming of new age gurus, who all propagate vegetarianism. So I want to go back and talk about those gurus who have written the epic literature of Ayurveda, which Puritans talk about. Let's talk about meat there. So why not talk about the original gurus? Why talk about gurus of mushroom now? Of course, I don't say that everybody was non-vegetarian or eating meat. There were certain sections of the society who were comfortable eating vegetarian food. But more than that, the history of meat in India has been very old. I mean, there's been excavation in the site of Rakhi Gadi, which is an old archaeological site, and Harappa civilization and all of that. And you would be amazed to know, Dr. Chaffee, that the utensils discovered from there had traces of lipids. So, and people are just not, you cannot push under the carpet. I mean, even speaking religiously now, I've had a spiritual background, and anybody worshipping Shiva or Shakti, in the tantric sphere, has to animal sacrifice or bali is a very sacred ritual done to invoke the god or the goddess. So, what are we talking about? It may have been a small section of the society who were comfortable eating meat, but combine that with the British Raj and with the propaganda of veganism, and with all this media coming in and mushrooming of new gurus, and this idea of being a purist. If you're eating vegetables, you're a purist, and meat is bad. So this entire amalgamation of screwed up ideas, I would say, or misinformed views have come up in the last few years, or the last few decades. Propaganda against meat was never this strong, and propaganda in favor of vegetarianism was never this strong. I mean, every day it's growing. I mean, it's getting stronger and stronger. But then it's just a voice, I would say. You can scream as much as you want, but the evidence of meat lies in the history of ancient India. You cannot deny it.
Yeah. And that's something I've spoken to others about, to my friend, Rudy, who's a doctor here. We worked in neurosurgery together. Now he's a GP, and same sort of background. He's from India, or his family's from India. He was born here in Australia, but his parents were vegetarian just for religious, cultural reasons. He tried going vegetarian, vegan for health reasons. He wasn't feeling very well, and he was only in his late 20s. He was a young guy, should be very healthy, and he didn't feel healthy, and he didn't have very good energy. He would, so he went, vegetarian, then he went vegan, and he's trying to fix his health. He's trying to do the best diet ever, which is, avoid all meat, and he's getting less and less well, really bad brain fog, really tired all the time. walking around the hospital, he would get tired just going up a flight of stairs. If he was going multiple flights of stairs, he'd have to rest in between flights of stairs. He couldn't go up 2 flights of stairs as a 28-year-old slender man. It wasn't like he was overweight or anything like that. And when we started talking about this, he became very interested, and because his motivation was just his health, he saw the merits of this, and he changed to carnivore, dramatically improved his health. His brain fog went away. He could think for the first time in a few years and realized he hated neurosurgery and wanted to get out of it. So he ended up quitting and going into GP. But after that, he started looking into the origins of this, looking at some of the ancient texts. And he was telling me then that a lot of the ancient religious texts spoke specifically about how important it was and vital it was to eat beef in particular, and how it was extremely healthy, extremely important that at certain cultural events or social gatherings or certain people would come to visit, you were required to sacrifice a cow or a bull and serve it as meat to your guests. And then what he was saying was that maybe in the 11th century or 1100 years ago, anyway, about a millennia ago, that Hinduism started becoming, or sorry, that Buddhism started coming up with
Yes.
prevalence and started becoming more popular. And it was sort of like a political sort of movement that everyone was like, well, Buddhism is all about, peace and tranquility and all this. And they're like, no, we're really the religion of peace. Look, we don't even eat animals. And, the Jainists, they sweep away bugs and things like that. And that it was sort of
Oh,
like a political
sorry to
movement.
interrupt you. I've been with the Buddhist monks for 4 months.
Mhm.
While I was doing my college and I didn't get a hostel, so I had to temporarily stay in a men's hostel, and where these guys were staying. Buddhists eat, every Buddhist that I know and I had seen there, they do eat meat.
Mhm.
If people, and now they will start debating about this after this podcast, but please go and read. I mean, I urge people to go and read. The Buddha died of eating contaminated meat. Yeah, it is mentioned. And like in every religion, it happens. There would come up a section that will debate it and this and that. But the Buddha always said, you eat whatever you get in your bhiksha, which is, you go around with your bowl, and whatever people put in that, you are supposed to eat that. It is a state of choicelessness. And the Buddha actually died of eating contaminated pork.
Interesting. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and in India, largely, I would also attribute it towards the time of the independence. Now, Mahatma Gandhi was a big figure and he was a vegetarian. And he sang songs of, non-violence and all of that. But tell me, the very idea of Indian non-violence with regards to meat is paradoxical, because one who doesn't know that even a vegan or a vegetarian diet entails murders,
Mhm.
millions of murders done. And then what kind of non-violence is this when your body is sick? It is crippled, it is asking for help, it is diseased. You are talking about non-violence on somebody else, but you're inflicting violence on yourself. I think this is a very masochistic way of existence, where you are very happy inflicting pain on yourself, because if your priority, if your the responsibility of whatever you're preaching has to be done from yourself, you're not doing that, but you're talking about the same principle applying to somebody else. So you want to be non-violent to animals while inflicting violence on yourself, seeing yourself sick, but you will not change that ideology and keep talking about non-violence. This is absolutely brilliantly paradoxical.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, and it's just because you're not causing the harm and you're not doing it yourself, and you don't see it, and it's sort of one step removed, doesn't mean that it's not happening. The amount of harm and damage to the environment and to animals from monocropping plant agriculture, that doesn't go away just because you're not directly killing the animals for food. The animals are dying either way. It's
Yes.
actually nicer to eat them for food and at least have their death go for something useful and meaningful, rather than just dying and rotting in a ditch somewhere. So yeah, I totally agree that you have to be honest, and you have to sort of own up to your own decisions. And so, we own up to it. We say, okay, we're going to eat animals, but we make sure that those animals were treated well, and that they had a good life, and that they weren't stuffed in a pen somewhere. I mean, I think that's important. I think that we can do that. I think that we can vote with our pocketbook, and some people don't have the luxury, to be able to, do that and try to, go to regenerative farms and buy locally and things like that. But people that do, I think that it is important to try to get, make sure that the animals were treated well. And just like that, people that are eating a plant-based diet, you need to accept the fact that, your quinoa and lettuce and all these sorts of things, come at the cost of a lot of animals, a lot of birds being poisoned, 1 quadrillion insects being eradicated in America every year. And that's the entire basis of the food chain for a lot of animals and birds and lizards and all these sorts of things. Now there's going to be billions of animals that can't exist because they aren't able to eat all these bugs because they've just been wiped out because of the pesticides and all the poisons that get into the rivers, poison all the fish, get into the groundwater, start poisoning humans, all these sorts of things. I mean, there are knock-on consequences. Just because you wanted to do the nice thing and it felt like the right thing doesn't mean it was the right thing. And if you have to look at the downstream consequences of your decisions, and if they aren't good, and if they aren't in keeping with your original principle, which was, not to hurt things and to do as little damage and harm as possible, well, then you need to abandon that. You need to go somewhere else. I mean, I think that those vegan principles would actually require vegans to actually start eating large animals that are treated well, because it causes the least harm and the least impact on the animal kingdom as well as the environment. Yeah.
I totally agree, but vegans just have this, 2, 3 defense with them, and eventually their logic and reasoning just goes for a toss, and there's always that emotional appeal to authority, and all of that, and they would come and write the same things that I think they've been writing since day one, and all of that has been busted. But vegans are vegans, but that's a good thing. I mean, people should really go through, all of these. Diets, and like I had been a vegetarian, though I was eating eggs and dairy, but veganism is a far-fetched, it's the other extreme of not eating anything. So when I can see that change, I'm the biggest proponent, I think, for the last 3 years of the carnivore diet. It's good in a way that they experience that, and every vegan that I've come across has talked about how, especially in autoimmune, and everybody tried the vegan route first, and then they got aggravated their condition, got lots of flare-ups, and it worsened actually, and then they came to me. So in a way, I'm happy that they've seen both spectrums. When they had an autoimmune condition, they tried to go vegan. They had some results, they saw some results, but eventually it all came back, it flared up, and some people, they had no results at all. So it's very easy to, then show them or talk about them the results that, the outcomes that we can achieve on a carnivore diet. So I'm happy, people are also coming through that route, because you're experiencing that side of the spectrum as well, and, like me.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Ira, thank you so much. It's been absolutely a pleasure talking to you. It's so great to see you again. I really appreciate you coming on, and I'm glad we were able to do this. Where can people find you online and see more of your stuff?
Okay, I'm based in India, as I said, and I'm practicing in Mumbai. But you can find me online on Twitter. I am the Ira Sahay at the rate THEIRASHAY, and the handle low carb healer. I'm also on Instagram with the same name, and you can either, if you want to get in touch with me, you can drop me a DM or something. So that's pretty much it.
Perfect.
Easy to
Well,
find.
perfect. So I'll put those links in the description, and people can find you down there. And please do go and follow Ira and see more of her work. But thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Dr. Chaffee. It's been as much and a bigger pleasure to be on your podcast and one of the heroes that I admire and truly do. And it was great fun talking to you at the Metabolic Health Conference. And I'm sure we would one of these days would invite you for a D Live podcast. We've already had Dr. Ken Berry, Sean Baker, Dr. Gary Fetke, long time back. I think in 2016-17.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. D-Life has had a series of podcasts beginning 2014 and onwards. And everyone, Dr. Anwin, Dr. Gary Fetke, Amy Berger, all of these people have been on the D-Life podcast long back. So you're the only one remaining, I think. So I will send you an invite for that. And we'll be very happy if you could come, for your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. It would be a pleasure. Great.
Thank you, Dr. Chain.
Okay,
thank you.
No problem. Thank you. And thank you everyone for watching. And please do hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment to let us know what you think. And please do go find Ira and follow her work as well. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time. Hey guys, thank you very much for taking the time out to listen to what I had to say. If you like it, then please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel and podcast. And if you're on YouTube, then please hit that little bell and subscribe, and that'll let you know anytime I have a new video out, which should be every week, if not more. And if you could share this with your friends, that would help me get the word out and let me know that you like what I'm doing. Thanks again, guys.